Those who play with the devil's toys shall be brought by degrees to wield his sword. Thomas Fuller, The Profane State. The Daily Grind, Chapter 153. James woke up and didn't remember any of his dreams, which was a surprise and a blessing. He'd woken Anesh up instantly, after making the connection, and they'd discussed it as best as a groggy mathematician and a sleep-deprived professional adventurer could. But at the end of the talk, they were no closer to answers, and James could barely keep his eyes open. So he'd slept for about 4 hours, while Anesh kept watch and messaged an unresponsive Elle. It wasn't enough, but they needed to talk to her, and sleeping through the day wasn't a great option, no matter how hot it got. Their car pulled up at Elle's place around 10 a.m., fears about the worst-case scenario abruptly banished when Elle's mom answered the door with a bright smile and an offer of a late breakfast, an offer both James and Anesh readily accepted. "Thanks for the bacon, Miss Chase," James spoke politely as he devoured the fried food on his plate. "Oh, it's no problem. I'm glad to see Eleanor making friends," the older woman nodded, toying with one of the curls in her hair as she stood by the stove. "She's always been such a loner, you know, and always more interested in her art than the people around her." Elle's mother sighed and shook her head. "And now she's so much twitchier, and this magician nonsense, I just don't understand." "Oh, magic's real," James offhandedly commented. "I haven't actually gotten to see any of her art either, which is weird. What does she work with?" "Spray paint, I think," Anesh said next to him. "I've seen some of it, back when I was checking out that place in California. It's good. A big gods and monsters kind of vibe. You'd like it." "Ooh, we should get her to do a mural for the lair." Elle's mom frowned as she plated up her own scrambled eggs and stood at the kitchen counter, watching the two boys at the beat-up dining room table while she took a forkful. "I didn't realize it was a religious thing when she talked about magic. Have I been being rude to her?" "Oh, probably, but she might have earned it." James rolled his eyes. "Also, it's not religious. I'm being literal. Did she not show you?" "No, I guess none of Elle's spells are actually that flashy, huh?" James frowned himself now. "Okay, well, we've got a dozen ways to resolve this in a bit after I eat. The magic's a real thing, though. Your daughter was probably twitchy because she risked her life helping us, and she ran off without actually talking to a therapist." "She doesn't need therapy," Elle's mom protested. "She just needs to get herself back on track. Don't go encouraging that kind of thinking in my daughter." She said it lightly, but Anesh noticed the woman's grip on her fork was much more like that of a weapon than a utensil. James opened his mouth, and then closed it, shrugged. "Well, I'd say so far I've mostly been discouraging her," he said. "I'll show you some magic later if you like. You don't have cancer, do you?" James raised an eyebrow at their host. "No, and Mom, what the hell?" Elle stood in the mouth of the hallway, unbound hair exploding out of the neck of her sky-blue bathrobe that she was wearing. It was almost adorable, except for the glare that James was pretty sure would, given enough time to work, kill a person. "You can't just invite random strangers in for breakfast," she rasped out, stomping into the kitchen to pour herself a glass of water. "They're your friends, honey." Her mother's comment seemed both innocuous and vaguely threatening all at once, in that exceptionally mom way. "Now sit down and have some eggs." Elle sat, still glaring at James, who returned her look with a smile. "You woke me up early," she informed him with unmoving, hostile eyes. "I slept for like 5 hours, and that was only because Anesh made me," James replied. "Hey, why does your town smell like the danger zone?" "You can't call it that. I have a name for it." James nodded, snapping a crispy piece of bacon in half and letting the meat dissolve on his tongue. He pointed the other half of it at her accusatorially. "You can't, or won't, tell us your name for it, so I need to call it something." "Oh, you showed them your secret hangout spot. Fun, very fun," Elle's mom cut in, adding a third plate to the table in front of her daughter. "Mom, Elle sighed. "Whatever, yes, sure." She turned back to James. "Also, stop making fun of me for things I literally am not allowed to talk about. Also, what?" "Yeah, you probably don't think of it as smelling the same. Everyone who's getting the sense seems to feel it differently, but yeah, there's this feeling around the place, like we're still out of bounds. I think that's what you're picking up on." James reached into his pocket and pulled out a purple orb. "Also, I think I can fix the compulsion problem." What? Elle started to ask, then trailed off with a sigh. I mean, I guess go for it. I don't... You told me, Elle's mother cut in, that you wouldn't encourage her. What? When? James asked, feigning surprise. Mom, would you fucking listen to yourself for once? Elle bit out, the words of an old argument pushing James and Anesh to the sidelines. I know you're just pretending so everything can be normal. I don't care. Normal isn't real. You... And then her words were drowned out, mixed up, and made incomprehensible as Elle's mother entered the conversation like a verbal tempest. James and Anesh scooted their chairs backward as the mother and daughter screamed at each other. Should we do something about this? Anesh whispered, and then repeated louder when that didn't work. Like what? Elle's already shot me once. I don't need a repeat of that experience. We could explain... Anesh trailed off as Elle's mother shouted something about Eleanor not living up to her potential. Yeah, never mind, he added. They waited, both of them trying to find literally anything to focus on aside from the ongoing fight. James was in the middle of reading the carving on a black and white cat clock sitting on the kitchen wall, flexing his upgraded eyesight to its limit, when Elle announced, "Oh, fuck this!" grabbed the bacon off her plate and stormed out of the room, her mother in hot pursuit. Do we... Wait for it. James held up a hand to his boyfriend. She's pissed, but she's still not dressed. I don't feel like Elle's the kind of person who's interested in going dungeon delving sans underpants. You know, I've been here in this country for 5 years now, and I still don't get why you call them underpants and not just pants. Anesh masked his nervousness under light conversation. Also, shorts is a weird word too, now that I think about it. Take it up with Sarah, James instructed him. Also, you have thought about it. You've taken it up with Sarah. Anyway, I hear stairs. Let's go out the back porch and loop around. The two of them slid the old glass patio door open and ducked out, closing it quickly so as not to let what little cool air the AC had provided out of the house. It was already warming up, even at this hour before noon that James thought of as early and everyone else thought of as almost lunch. Dry grass crunched underfoot as they circled around the house, James carefully unlatching an old wooden gate that could give someone splinters just by being near it for too long. They got to the driveway just in time for James's prediction to be close to perfect. Elle, now wearing actual clothing and heavy boots, backpack thrown over one shoulder, practically kicked her own front door open and stomped out, still followed by her mother, who was doing her best to yell her daughter into agreeing with her. Which was never going to work. James and Elle were barely even at the stage of, we can work together, I guess, and he already knew that this was just not a functional way to talk to that girl. Especially not when she was already extra pissed that she was limited in what she could say when it came to details anyway. This is the most awkward thing I've ever experienced, Anesh muttered in James's ear, leaning his head on his partner's shoulder. I'm 500% uncomfortable. Is that a mathematical measurement? James asked as the mother and daughter continued their verbal brawl. Yes. Are we doing anything here? Anesh asked. I'm on it. James stepped backward into the street, taking a deep breath of hot afternoon air. He stretched his arms out to his sides, fingers spread wide, and reached something immaterial inside him. Hoy! He shouted, commanding voice cutting through the familial fight. I've got a partial solution to this. Elle and her mother both snapped their eyes around to focus on him, and for a second James almost hesitated as the combined anger that they'd been pointing at each other was suddenly directed his way, even if Elle did rein it in after a quick second. This isn't, Elle's mother started to say. But James didn't listen. He had her attention, and, as he grabbed onto the power inside him, he also crouched down and made contact with the asphalt, lightly touching his fingers to the ground. Then he took control of it. There were a few schools of thought on using the blue orb's absorption powers. Different people in the Order all had different ideas on what the best way to make use of them actually was. For some, it was a straightforward thing. The orbs did something, and you could do that thing. But that was unimaginative. Some people thought that physical contact with your target made it easier. Some people found motions helped guide the powers, especially the manipulation ones. And other members believed that every use was an exchange, and by offering more of your own health you could get more done. The one thing they all seemed to agree on was that the effects molded to thoughts, And so focus and creativity and the ability to actually picture what you wanted all helped. All of them were probably partially right, but the Order had some stuff going on and nothing had been tested thoroughly yet. James wasn't great at visualizing what he was after, but thanks to multiple purple orb enhancements, keeping his brain focused on task wasn't that hard. The asphalt under his fingers shifted. It didn't liquefy, but it flowed like water anyway. Mentally, he marked out a circle around him and sliced a thin line through it, separating the local asphalt from the rest of the road. Again, he didn't know if this helped or not, but James figured if he had to pull on less total matter, it would be easier. Standing up, he brought 2 twisting spirals of pavement with him underneath the palms of his hands. He pivoted, using his hand as a guiding point for where he wanted the material to move, and with the burning charge of the blue power still active, it obeyed. James moved his arm in a loop, and then again at the elbow, pulling a streamer of pavement up in a large spiral, suspended in the air at head height by a pair of thin struts still connected to the ground. With his other hand, he simply pulled up and tried to envision the black material blooming like a flower. Which half worked, but the arrangement of alien spikes coming out in a ball on top wasn't like any flower found on Earth. Then the charge ended, and James was left standing at the end of a driveway with his rapidly assembled art installation and piece of evidence. "Magic!" he said simply. "Now can everyone calm the hell down?" James asked, his tone turning irritated. Anesh walked over and fished a tissue out of his pocket, passing it to his boyfriend. "Your nose is bleeding," he said. "Ah, thanks." "What? When? How?" Elle's mother stood open-mouthed, staring at the statuary now blocking her driveway. "How did you do that?" Elle sighed. "Magic, Mom," she said, the anger in her voice not completely gone. "You couldn't have just opened with that?" she asked James. "I was having breakfast," he defended himself. "Look, we've got bigger problems than this. Elle, we need to talk about actual tactical problems. There is something wrong in this town, and we need to break that hostile infomorph you have in your head. And I want to finish my coffee. So while it's clear you and your mom have some issues to work out, can we please deal with the bigger problems first?" The elder of the 2 Chase women nodded absently. "Go talk to your friends, Eleanor," she said, stepping forward to run a hand over the shaped asphalt still hot from the sun. "We can talk later." "Not even an apology," Elle muttered, stomping into her house with James following. Anesh followed as well, but before he did, he addressed Elle's mother. I can put that back before we go," he said, "so your car isn't boxed in." Anesh waited, but didn't get any kind of response from her, so he just nodded politely, unseen, and followed James and Elle. Awkward. Not impossible for him to handle, and he didn't have the anxiety that James had to cope with, but still, awkward was, by its nature, not very fun to be in the middle of. "Emergency response. Are you in any immediate danger?" Marcus recited the words calmly as possible anyway. 2 years volunteering at the suicide prevention hotline and a lifetime living in what other people would call a bad part of town had left him capable of faking calm at the worst of times, and working here certainly wasn't the worst of times. He was one of 3 new operators, new despite having more experience with this sort of thing than most everybody else here, but also new because he wasn't a motherfucking superhero yet, and it was the yet part that had gotten him to sign on. It was the experience, a recommendation from a local activist friend, and already speaking 2.5 languages that got him the invite in the first place. I don't think so," the woman's voice on the other end of the line said. "I don't know if I called the right place, actually." Marcus noted that down in the fresh form on his screen. This kind of call wasn't uncommon. He checked a script that he hadn't fully memorized yet. "Well, ma'am, we provide rapid emergency response options for immediate danger, medical transport, and mental health crisis." He wanted to snicker every time he read the word rapid. "Are any of these what you were calling for?" Oh, no, I was calling because I think I found your cat." The woman paused. "The big cat," she, quote-unquote, explained. Marcus raised his eyebrows and looked around at the other operators in the small room, along with one on-call response unit that was waiting. Was he being pranked? And if so, was it by someone in here? The boss was right over there, taking calls like the rest of them, so it probably wasn't some kind of hazing thing. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't think you have the right number. No one here has lost a cat, Marcus said politely. Across the room, Harvey's head pivoted like it was on a swivel. Oh, damn, sorry, the woman sighed nervously. I was hoping this was how I could get in touch with Deb. I never got contact info. Are you sure you're not, hang on a second. Marcus looked over at Harvey, waving frantically at him. I think my boss wants to talk to you? No, he's busy. I don't know why. Wait, Deb, can you describe her? Marcus actually did know there was a Deb who sometimes worked as an on-call member of Response, though she was an older member of this weird order that he'd fallen into. Oh, short dark hair, kind of a commanding voice. Her girlfriend is kind of a snake? The other voice on the phone answered. Well, there weren't many options for that, unless it was a very specific metaphor. Okay, you have the right place, Marcus confirmed. I'll be honest, I'm new here, I don't have a script for this, and the boss is busy coordinating something, so this might be weird, but... He cleared his throat and pitched his voice into the polite operator mode. Thank you for calling the Order of Endless Rooms. What do you need? Well, I found a cat, like I said. I kind of assumed it was yours, but if not, maybe you could figure out what to do with it. I don't really have space for it in my clinic. Is your clinic especially small? Marcus asked, wincing as he felt like he already knew the answer. No, the cat's the size of a truck. And invisible. Of course it is, he nodded, typing in giant cat to his form. I'm sorry, what was your name? He asked. Oh, Dr. Amy Morris, veterinary doctor, but I've worked on some people before, she added, sounding a little self-conscious about that. Marcus split his attention in half, years of experience reading while on a call letting him pull up and search through the operations manual while he listened. Ah, here we go. I guess this is a thing somebody already... He went silent as he read the entry, specifically the part about the threat assessment. Seriously? What? Is everything okay? Amy asked. I feel like I should be asking you that. Are you sure you don't need immediate help? Oh, no, it's all right. He's asleep right now, after I fed him. He's been here a few days. I just didn't know how to get in touch, the vet replied. I just figured you'd have a better place for him? I, Marcus floundered. All right, I'm going to be real with you. I've been helping people get to hospitals and escape abusive relationships. I'm sort of unprepared for this. Do we have a giant cat tree here or something? I don't even know how many basements this building has. Oh, Dr. Morris's voice was dejected. I just thought... Oh, don't get me wrong, you called the right place. Apparently. Somehow. Let me just get in touch with somebody who's here with more authority than me, and I can get you an actual phone number to call. Do you mind giving me contact information? We can call you back in the near future, probably sometime today. Marcus glanced at the main screen. There was another call incoming. I don't have much time right now, he said. Oh, right, emergency line. He could almost feel the woman nodding on the other end. She rapidly provided him a phone number, which he marked down, and without hesitation added, Thank you, and good luck, and hung up. Marcus didn't have much time to think about how weird that interaction had been, even by his expanding standard of what counted as weird. One click filed the form and brought up a fresh one. Another click answered the inbound call. Emergency response. Are you in immediate danger? He intoned. Yes. The boy's voice on the other end gasped, pained, obviously, ragged. My leg. I hurt my leg. Marcus projected calm. No matter how stressful the situation, no matter how panicked the caller, he had to stay calm, or it all just got worse. So he did. What's your location? Simple questions. Keep the kid talking. What city? What state? Yes, really, what state? Fill out a telepad while holding a conversation. Double check it. How'd you get hurt? Check for local hospitals. No open alliances with the Order in that area, so land in the parking lot. Fill out the second page. Get it ready to go. Is there anyone there with you? Signal one of the 2 people medical teams in the area. Pass off the telepad. Don't worry, Marcus said as he watched the team vanish out of the operations center. Help is on the way. I'm... The kid gasped out, still on the phone. I'm in the middle of nowhere. He sounded on the verge of tears, if he wasn't already openly crying. Yeah, Marcus replied, and then he got to say the line that was his favorite part of the new job. That's not really a problem for us. We're already there. There would be 2 more calls before he really had time to sit back and be concerned about the truck-sized invisible cat, and once again, the boundary of what just another day at work meant got pushed farther out. Elle was buried in her closet when James pushed the half-open door to her bedroom the rest of the way open and stepped in. Anesh just loitered in the door. The place was a mess, but it was a small, controlled mess. Elle was moving things around, searching for something, but her art supplies and her newly acquired mechanics tools were all neatly arrayed and set up, just like she wanted them. Even when she was ransacking her own room, Elle kept things at least marginally clean. Here, she said, shuffling backward from a closet shelf before popping back to her knees, twisting her torso around and tossing a shoebox onto her bed. The box impacted a half-empty gallon jug of raspberry iced tea and slid to the floor, but the lid didn't pop off, so James politely set it back on a more topographically stable part of the blankets without comment. Okay, do the voodoo on me so I can explain this shit. James rolled the purple orb in his pocket around at the same time he rolled his eyes at Elle. First off, don't call it that. It's impolite. No one here cares or is religious. Do your Professor X impression. Second of all, James continued unabated, we actually need to talk about what it means to implant an infomorph in a person. Elle sighed and threw herself onto one of the clear parts of her bed, flopping with a dramatic thud, boots hitting the hardwood floor. All right, whatever. Is this going to be about how I have to be responsible and ethical and stuff? Yeah, actually. A bite of anger entered James' voice. It is, because you do. Elle, I'm not going to fucking leave you with a living creature in your care if you're going to treat it like a tool the whole time. And if you keep acting like that, I honestly am going to stop giving a single fuck about your current predicament. James glared at her, not flinching away from Elle raising one arm off the bed to flip him off. As of now, Anesh and I are here as advanced scouts to determine if your entire town is being eaten alive. It doesn't matter how much magic or insider info you can offer us, you are not that important, so if you want to help, maybe act like a goddamn adult, not an angry teenager. It was a little mean. It was a lot mean, actually, but James hadn't slept much, and what sleep he had gotten was a bit spoiled for some reason. And if being angry was what it took to get through to Elle, then maybe that was just a bonus, because James was rapidly running out of the patience it took to keep his anger in check. It wasn't much of a secret, but James was angry almost all the time. The world disappointed him, frequently. People could be so much better, and they either had their opportunities to show that cut away, pushed down by poverty and other methods of control, or they were the ones with their hands on those controls. And for most of his life, like everyone else, James accepted that it was too much for him to do anything about, because that was more or less true. So he put on a smile, played games with his friends, cracked jokes, and ignored the ongoing dystopia that was way more boring than the one he got to fight back against in tabletop RPGs. Of course, now he could teleport, which sort of made it hard to pretend that he couldn't start improving things. Elle sat back up, swinging her arms for leverage to push herself forward and look at James. She didn't look happy. Something about how he was looking at her made her feel like she was back in elementary school, having a stern teacher who clearly cared explain why it wasn't kind of her to throw rocks at frogs. Yeah, okay, she said. I don't want to be that jerk. What do I need to know? The tension eased. Okay. James stopped, subconsciously gritting his teeth. 3 things. First off, a nascent infomorph isn't alive. It'll do exactly what it's meant to do, and basically nothing else. If you let it, then it will just fade away after a month or 2, and it will never have been alive. I'm aware this might sound hypocritical, but until that point, it is a tool. The thing here is, this one is going to eat the other one in your head, if it wins, and it'll live longer, and it might live long enough to become a person. What happens then is kind of up to you. You'll experience it in flashes of feelings and dreams, and if you push yourself and make contact on purpose and figure out what language it's speaking, well, then... Then what? Elle asked. She pulled her legs up, sitting half off her bed, hands holding her boots by the toes, sitting like a student, listening and absorbing. And then you can talk. Help them grow into whatever they'll be, Anesh commented from his place, leaning on the doorframe. There's a few infomorphs in the Order. They like us for some reason. Ah, that's because none of them have gotten hired at a Jamba Juice and moved out with their friends yet, James waved him off. Elle tilted her head. Seriously? Yeah, Jamba Juice is always doing interviews, but it's never hiring. Bad news for every new infomorph that needs a job. No, you fuckhole, that thing about them moving out, they can do that? She threw a pillow at him, hard enough to know that she meant it, but not so fast that James didn't duck to the side and snatch it out of the air before it rammed into one of her empty easels. Yeah, eventually they'll be strong enough to do that. It'll be between you two. That's how relationships work, Elle, he said, almost sadly. Now, ready? She didn't hesitate. Hit me. James nodded and pulled the orb out, holding it up in the light between his thumb and first two fingers. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of bacon still wafting up from downstairs and the excessive number of paint tubes that Elle had scattered across her floor. It wasn't hard to dip back into the mindset now that he knew it. The words were still there. It wasn't like using a blue or absorbing any of the orbs. Some of the power effects from Officia Mundi needed emotions, a feeling, a vibe, a mindset. Some things, like the totems, needed strict adherence to geometric rules. And some things, well, sometimes you just had to know what to say. No interference with freedom of communication, James spoke. Paraphrasing, perhaps, but capturing the essence of a document that had been around since before he was born. The orb turned in his hand, shifting from solid object to a star field of potential, and with a small nudge, he flipped a switch that had always been there but he hadn't been able to see, and James shoved it forward toward Elle. The distortion in the air slipped into the girl sitting on the bed without any kind of fanfare or obstacle. That was just how these infomorphs were. You either got out of the way, or they got in your head. Humans didn't have a natural defense against them. Now what? Elle asked. Now nothing. It either works or it doesn't, James said. We've got a lot more purple orbs in the trunk, though, so if it works at all, we can just bury the thing in attempts and go from there. Very Stalingrad. I don't like it, Anesh added. Try it out, though. What's in the box? He inclined his head toward the shoebox on the bed. Oh, map scraps from the dungeon, Elle said, dismissively. If we're lucky, one of the ones you two have will line up with something in there. She popped the lid off, revealing an inch-thick layer of assorted scraps of paper. James didn't let anything show on his face as he continued to prompt. Why's that? Some kind of reward? Yeah, it's where spells come from, Elle nodded, and then froze mid-nod and looked down at her hands. Oh shit, she said. Wow, that worked fast. Holy crap, that worked at all. Yes! She hopped off the bed, throwing a punch at an invisible target. Take that, you fucking brainworm! Ha ha! Yes! Now, time for wizard shit! Okay, do you two have your map chunks? James couldn't help but share an empathic laugh, letting Elle's enthusiasm for her abruptly loosened tongue get to him. Along with her excitement for wizard shit. It was hard for James to deny, but he did like wizard shit. Yeah, so how do we split these? Oh, easy. Whoever found the newest one gets it. Elle gave an easy shrug. It's fair, and it balances out over time. It's just a good rule. James and Anesh both went quiet suddenly, and shared a look between themselves that went mostly unnoticed by Elle. The question, shared with sad quirks of eyebrows, was, and how would you know it was a good rule without someone to make rules with? But Elle was too happy to notice, or probably give a shit in the moment. She started laying out map bits and rambling off random facts about her favorite extra-dimensional stomping ground as the three of them compared names and geography. Not even to be helpful, just to experience how nice it was to finally talk about it. Sometimes there's trains off in the distance. I've never seen any tracks, but there's absolutely trains. I've been considering getting something that's good for off-road and checking it out, but the place obviously doesn't want anyone going off the highway, right? You know the caltrops disguised as gravel? There's more of that out there, just random strips of it in the desert, big old lakes of the things. I tried walking as far as I could once, but I didn't find anything aside from that and some plants. The place is kind of stupidly obvious about how it pushes you into driving. James and Anesh barely had any control of the conversation. They were mostly focused on trying to find matches anyway. Places where, Elle openly told them, the maps lined up. Didn't have to be the same scale, they didn't even have to fit together very well, they just had to overlap where they were showing. So they let her talk with only occasional prompting while they scanned. Those ghost cars can get on the road. Real pain in the ass. They will follow basically forever. And you might have noticed, but there's not a lot of places to hide or make turnoffs, so if one gets on your tail, you're in it for the long haul until you get to an off-ramp. Oh, there's highways too, or at least big fucking snarls of road that the on-ramps go up to. I think there's some kind of long-range teleporters, but I've never gone too far in one except to dodge a tail. Anesh had exactly one question toward the end of their double-checking, and Elle had an easy answer for it. Oh yeah, the gas heals cars, and don't infect me with your weird slang. First off, all slang is weird, James addressed her. I've heard teenagers say fleek before, and I'm pretty sure that's frowned upon by the Bible. Second of all, so far everything we've infected you with has made you happier. Third, related to that, are you feeling okay? Bit of a headache, kinda dizzy, Elle admitted instantly. Probably because I didn't eat breakfast, but I can say anything I want, so I'm good. Thanks. Elle paused, and then furrowed her eyebrows. Oh, yeah, I'm worried I'm being too nice. She shrugged. It's fine, I'm gonna go eat, and then do you want to go try the road again tonight? Yeah, I need a better feel for it, James said. I can tell something's wrong out here, but I can't track it down. Maybe we can find some map bits that actually match up. Would be cool to be a real wizard, Anesh added. James ruffled his partner's hair. Alright, I'll see you outside. Gonna go put the road back together in front of your house. Elle, glad the infomorph worked. He strolled off, taking the stairs down two at a time. Anesh heard him offer a polite farewell to Elle's mom, who was absolutely eavesdropping at the bottom of the stairs. I kind of forgot he can be angry sometimes, Elle told Anesh, as they shoveled the bits of random maps back into the box together. Yeah, well, he probably forgot you can be a bit of a shit while you were away, he told her with a dry tone, accent highlighting the last four words. The look of indignation on her face made it worth it for Anesh to have profanity-riddled threats rained upon him as he walked down the stairs himself, a small smirk on his face. There was a common misconception about the FBI that they were mostly staffed by some sort of secret agent. Stealthing around, uncovering secrets and plots, getting into gunfights with foreign spies, romancing their rivals, wearing sunglasses, assassinating highly threatening targets and driving cool cars, being glamorous and dangerous in equal measure. The usual. It was mostly bullshit, partially because it was mostly the CIA that had assassins. The myth had been started about the time the FBI had caught a notorious serial killer back in the 70s or 80s. As near as Nate knew the story that got passed around to new recruits, what had happened was they had used modern, for the time, tricks, such as actually thinking about the killer's motives and following evidence, and as a result, TV and movies for the last 40 years had painted the agents of the Bureau as unstoppable super geniuses. The reality was, Nate empathized more with half the episodes of The X-Files he'd seen than any other piece of media. A big chunk of the Bureau was analysts, the people who used the magic of the human brain to make connections between police records, social trends, legal wiretap records, illegal wiretap records, and, yes, people's Twitter accounts, to keep an eye on whether anyone was planning to blow up any government buildings. Another big chunk was made up of people way smarter than Nate, who had the unenviable job of taking the processed data from the analysts and turning it into security reports that congressmen and presidents would fail to read properly before making decisions. They had field agents, yes. A lot of them were specialists, like hostage crisis negotiators. Some of them, like Nate, had actually been intel gatherers, though that was giving Nate himself a lot of credit that maybe he didn't deserve. Nate's job had, largely, been to join neo-Nazi gangs and just hang out while he wrote down names and home addresses. And it was comically easy for him to get membership. He was a well-muscled, inked-up, bald guy who was ex-Navy and had the high qualification of being pretty white. Nate didn't get offended by much, but he was vaguely insulted by how stupid a lot of the guys he spied on were. His job had mostly been drinking beer, keeping his mouth shut, and trying to figure out if the cops who came to these meetings were undercover or undercover until his superiors had what they considered adequate information before moving on to the next wannabe insurgency. And then the order happened. And suddenly Nate had a job trying to train up people to be intelligence operatives. A job that he had never really had and didn't fully understand, but that everyone seemed to think he was the most qualified for, and that, alarmingly, he was the most qualified for. So he'd started teaching what he could. It wasn't like he was an idiot. He'd done 2 tours of duty in parts of the world that asked people to adapt or die, and he passed on what he knew best to the aspirants that JP brought to their doorstep. How to fight, how to run, how to keep calm and figure out which one to do at what time, how to gather intel. He tried to mimic how the Bureau kept information segmented, too, but that was never going to work here, so instead they started building something new. Communication protocols, ways to collaborate at the speeds they needed to. They'd been working at it for months, and they were getting better, too. But a lot of these kids, and Nate did think of them as kids, were mid-20s, too eager, and he felt like they'd never really be ready to be let off on their own. And yet, for all that he was complaining in his head, sometimes working for the Order had distinct advantages. Advantages that felt like, well, like cheating. Nate moved toward the front of the chemical refinery, casually approaching the check-in post to the parking lot. Calling it a guard post would be generous. It was a chain-link fence that rolled back to let cars in, while a security guard checked people's IDs. He was on foot, flanked by Bill, the two of them moving about 7 feet apart from each other. The generally accepted range for what one of the shield bracers would cover. Nate had a skulljack braid clipped to a spot under his collar, running off his phone's connection to give him a view in the corner of his eye of the overhead angle that the drones they had out could see. The visual wasn't really in his eye exactly, but it helped him to think of it that way, just like it helped to think that he looked cool wearing glasses that didn't fit his head when he didn't have prescription lenses in. The glasses were the part that felt like cheating. "Yo!" Nate called out to the 2 men who were trying really hard to look like they were casually lounging in the guard shack. There was a trick to casually lounging in a way that didn't look fake. If you ever watched a movie where there were guards relaxing, it was pretty obvious to a lot of people that they were acting. Because they were actors. But you could spoof it well enough that most people couldn't notice. These guys were good, but not good enough when someone knew what to look for. Of course, Nate knew what to look for, because he'd watched these 2 through a scope while they incapacitated and replaced the actual guards, and then let a dozen of their friends into the facility. Nate wasn't actually that into violence. He was good at it, but it wasn't fun, which was why their team had no actual interest in starting a fight here, and he'd pulled up in a delivery truck and not a battle wagon. There was altogether way too much shit happening at this facility to ever make him stick his neck into it. It didn't matter that they had a reasonable idea of how to get into the dungeon, or that the old gun was poking around the edges, or that it was a big enough deal that some kind of secret army was invading it. They were here for exactly one reason, and then to bail the entire operation out of this state until things calmed down. And that was to see who the hell these guys were. Because the glasses that showed group affiliation didn't really work that well at long range. "Got 7 packages today," Nate said, stepping up to the fence like he owned the place and flipping the clipboard with an irresponsibly fraudulent shipping manifest on it around to the guards. "You guys wanna—" "Not taking delivery today," one of them said, stepping out of the guard shack. The accent was hard for Nate to place. Thick, slow, almost Russian, but with an intimidating tone that any supervillain would be happy to have in a henchman. It matched the wide frame and polished bald head of the man who'd stepped out. "Chemical spill," he lied. "Return tomorrow." Nate was only half listening, because he was processing visual input from a few sources, and one of them was a pair of ill-fitting glasses showing him the words, Harlan's Wolf Pack, Enforcer. A glance through the door at the guard shack got a similar tag on the other one, too. Ah, fuck, Nate said out loud, voice more modulated for professional disappointment than secret agent-based concern. Bosses are going to hate that, but whatever, not my problem. You mind signing off? He asked, flipping to a separate page they had prepared for this exact situation. The guard didn't speak, just silently accepted the pen and scrawled something that wasn't going to be close to his name on the line at the bottom. Leave now, not safe, he lied in that same heavy voice. Yeah, you guys stay safe yourselves, yeah? Nate was already walking away, swatting Bill on the shoulder to get him moving too. Back to the truck, pause for a bit to make it look good, poking away at the GPS, then pull away. On a hill a half-mile away, Mars saw their truck moving and recalled the drone swarm from its overhead sentry duty. Half an hour later, after taking a few deliberately awkward traffic maneuvers they'd planned out in advance, and confirming they weren't being followed, Nate pulled the truck up to a wide field empty of anything except unmowed Kentucky bluegrass and weeds. And about a dozen other members of the order. After Mars pulled up in his own rental car, they were all there, even the Camercondas. Nate still felt nervous about the snakes being out in the open like this in the middle of the day, but it wasn't like there was anywhere safer in this city. How'd it go? Dave asked as Nate and Bill walked up. Those guys are scary, Bill commented. Am I wrong here, or did that brother seem like he was ready to kill us both? He asked Nate. You're not wrong, Nate said. I got the feeling they had some big guns just out of sight. Mars, how'd it look? He asked the approaching engineer and their current drone operator. Weren't you watching? The kid asked. Not in a snarky way, like Nate had come to expect from half the people he worked with. Just curious, like he expected Nate to actually have been watching the whole time. I was busy. So, anything? They got two big trucks pulled up around the back, like we saw go in. A couple of guys waiting there. The drones we don't have super high zoom yet. I'll fix that later. But I'm pretty sure they were just openly carrying rifles. No signs of the actual employees inside, or the rest of them. The place doesn't have enough big buildings that there's too many places without windows to spot through. Yeah, alright. I'm calling it, Nate said. We're out. Everyone make sure all our gear is accounted for. We're porting back in 10. Wait. Dave crossed his arms in a small X of denial. We're just going to let them get away with that? What if they kill the employees? First off, we are not trained for this, Nate reminded him. We have 3 Camercondas and 5 shield bracers here. They have 20 dudes with assault rifles. They are so obviously here for the dungeon, there's no chance that they only have guns. If we go in, trying to be heroes, we're going to get the hostages and ourselves shot. He shook his head. No, this is out of our range. This is out of a trained SWAT team's range. We can call it in, make it somebody else's problem if we want, but we stay out of it. Probably safer for the people in there who are hostages if we do nothing. Anyway, we got a name to go on now, which is more than we had earlier. We are not sticking around. I really don't want to get shot at again, Deb offered, hand resting on Frequency of Sunlight's head. Especially not over a dungeon that will probably also try to shoot at us. How do you figure? Dave asked her. Deb shrugged. That's just how today's been going, she answered. Alright, telepad's ready. Leave the rental cars, I'll deal with that later. Nate gave out a quick command, and the rest of them moved into position. The Order didn't do ranks that much, but they were smart about operations like this. He was in charge. That meant his call was the one that counted. Let's go home, and worry about 1 or 2 other ongoing problems for a while, he said. 2 telepads tore, and 12 people bailed out of a situation that had spiraled well beyond their control. Alright, yeah, this town is messed up, James said bitterly. He was sitting curled in the passenger seat of their car, knees up on the dashboard as he balanced a laptop on his stomach. Anesh was trying to take a nap, maximizing the moonless summer night and making up for some of his lost sleep before they ventured into the dungeon again. It wasn't really working. We have spent, he said, without opening his eyes, all day wandering around, and now You have decided that something is wrong. Yeah, because I've been Googling statistics and comparing YouTube videos and stuff, James answered, popping one of his headphones out. Anesh sighed. Half an hour before Elle showed up, supposedly, and he knew beyond any doubt he wasn't going to get sleep before then. He reached down and adjusted his driver's seat, turning his makeshift bed back into a chair. What statistics? Do tell, he asked. Census stuff mostly, but also things like business foot traffic in different population density areas. I'm trying to figure out if the number of people we saw in, like, the grocery store is appropriate for a town like this. Okay, and? And it absolutely isn't, James concluded. There just flat out are not enough people here, even considering the pandemic, even if a third of them moved away, which leaves only a few options. Anesh took a shot in the dark. High murder rate, downrange of a nuclear test site, homeowners associations. Your country loves homeowners associations. No to all. No to at least most of those, James replied. I actually checked for environmental factors. I've been flipping through local newspapers, which is all online now. It's very handy. Nothing seems to have changed, except that there's only 2 people left actually writing articles, which might be normal, but no, this is dungeon nonsense. A whole city, though? Anesh shivered. We've seen dungeons, or the things in them, kidnap people in groups before, but not thousands of people. No one has noticed? Elle's mom noticed there were fewer people. She just assumed it meant people were moving away, James pointed out. Anesh hated this. I hate this, he said. How are we supposed to fight something that can eat the population of a whole city? How's it even doing it? Officium Mundi can send out agents. Is that what the road's doing? Just dragging people back one by one? That doesn't actually make sense, James wrinkled his forehead. Yeah, actually, you raise a good point, because there are cities around this size with alarmingly high murder rates, and they aren't losing population like this one is. I know that asking this will fill me with regret and dread. Anesh massaged his temples with his fingertips. But I'm sure you know the answer. How many people would a hypothetical dungeon have to kill to make the population go down? For a population of 20,000 people, like here, 700 to 800 a year. That's a couple people a day. Someone would notice, surely. What's the population actually dropped by? James hummed. Well, it's hard to say, he admitted. I've been trying to make an educated guess based on how many people are physically around, hence the marketing stuff. But the pandemic really messes with estimates, even if it feels like no one here is taking it seriously. But thanks to the magic of online realtor services, I've got an idea of how many homes are for sale around here, and I'm going to guess, mind you, that this place currently has about 5,000 people in it. That's 3/4 of the population. Gone. Anesh didn't know how to process that. That's insane. That's 15,000 people, James. 17,000, give or take, assuming my guess is close, James confirmed. All dead. Eaten by the dungeon. Well, that's the thing. James slapped the laptop shut and sat up, shuffling his feet back into his shoes on the floor of the car. I feel like that would have attracted some notice, and a lot of the homes for sale around here, they're for sale by owner. Elle's mom wasn't wrong. People are just leaving. Not dead. Well, I mean, they might be dead, James shrugged. I haven't checked everyone. Anesh glanced at his nominal boyfriend. You're being a real downer today, huh? I'm tired. There's something going on here. I've spent all day getting kinda mad at Elle, James replied. She really got to you, huh? James sighed. She's just... I don't know. It feels like she doesn't care. I almost want to say that the reason she doesn't remember her team is because she thinks it's normal to not have friends because she keeps being an abrasive jerk. Little harsh. Anesh checked his rearview mirror again, looking for any sign of the abrasive jerk they were supposed to be meeting. It's tiring. Like she has Sarah levels of energy, but packed into someone I don't get along with. James shrugged again. I'm worried that no matter what we get out of this delve, we're not going to be able to solve this problem. We just don't have the tools for it. The problem was, There was really only so much they could actually do here. He'd agreed to come out here to help because Elle thought that something was wrong, and something was wrong. But what was happening was either the most ravenous dungeon that James had encountered yet, chewing through the population of a town, as well as a good chunk of through traffic if the number of abandoned cars at the motel was any indication, with complete disregard for attracting attention. Or it was something else that was just encouraging people to fuck off and not come back. Either way, James wasn't actually equipped to deal with that kind of thing. They knew that dungeons were vulnerable to damage somehow, but not how to actually deal that damage. He was perfectly capable of rescuing survivors, but not changing mass trends on a whim. He had a couple of tricks, a kind of impossibly valuable logistical edge, and he was planning on picking up a spell or two, hopefully tonight. He also owned a very illegal gun and one normal gun. But no matter how high above his weight class he could punch, there wasn't much of a way to strike at seemingly legitimate migration patterns. We need some kind of magic detector, Anesh suggested offhand, checking his phone. Hey, have you checked in with home base lately? James changed the subject, shifting around, uncrossing his arms and peering out the window at a passing raccoon. Yes, Anesh said. I'm catching up on some stuff now. Have you? I've been assuming they'd call if they needed me, so I'm enjoying vacation. Okay, want a rundown? Hit me. James turned to face his partner. Anesh cleared his throat and rapidly scrolled through messages. There's an invisible mountain in Australia. Research has been recklessly touching artifacts again and spawned an authority. The last office delve went fine. A bunch of kids and some of the Camercondas are trying to invent an interspecies sport, and we found the giant cat. James nodded to all of that, and then pressed his fingertips together in front of his face, spreading his hands and asking, Can you explain any of that? I could, but Elle's here. Oh, Nate sent us a message that you'll probably see soon. They've pulled out of Texas. He made the call that it was too dangerous. Apparently there's a hostile group there. A group like us? James's breath caught in his throat. Anesh shook his head. Not in a way that we'd want, if Nate's right, and I think I trust him here. Yeah, me too. Fuck. That was really all there was to say. James would review Nate's report later. If it was pressing, Nate would have said so, but it sounded like he'd assessed the other group in play and decided the situation would turn violent too easily. Which was the exact opposite of how James wanted contact with others on their side of the veil to go. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Nate was just being overly cautious. Maybe this could turn around. But that wasn't how James's luck had been going lately. Yo! You cocks ready to go on a road trip? Elle's shout cut through the closed windows of their car, the girl leaning out of her own driver's side window to yell their attention onto her. Do you think she knows we took a road trip to get here? James asked. Next time let's go to the beach on vacation, Anesh suggested. Oregon's beaches are cold, though. James gave a comical whine. When Anesh just stared at him for a second, he flicked his eyes around them. What? Anesh didn't answer verbally, opting instead to pull a telepad out of his coat pocket and wave it around. Okay, fine, we'll go to the beach, James relented with a laugh. Let's go say hi to Elle before we start this bad idea of a night. The two of them pushed their doors open, letting the cold, air-conditioned air of the car spill out to the simmering summer night. James apologized loudly to the raccoon that he sent scattering in a panic into the trees by the side of the road, the little critters screaming at him slightly from the bushes. Okay, so can you tell us more about breaching the entrance now? James asked her as he and Anesh walked up to her car. Elle was propped on her elbows out the window, giving them a dangerous grin. Weirdly, I already told you everything about it, she shrugged, hitting her head lightly on the roof of her own car. Oh, we gotta watch out for sand goons when we come out. Sometimes they hang around by the entrance when it's night. What the hell is... It's 4 legs of sand, that's it. They try to bury you, basically. Easy to outrun, though, but they lurk around. Elle clarified quickly. James sighed. Okay, so our mission objectives are finding more maps, getting acquainted with the feel of this dungeon so Anesh and I can try to track something in the real world, not dying to sand goons, good name by the way, and maybe exploiting the time dilation to take a nap. Anything else? Anything on your end? Elle nodded, scooting back into her seat and slapping her hands onto the steering wheel with a thwack. Sounds good to me. Ready to get this show on the... Don't. Anesh cut her off with a roll of his eyes. Can I not don't? James asked playfully. Because I was going to make a joke about getting on the highway to the danger zone. It's still a terrible name, Elle told him. Also, I told you I already named this one, so you can't call it that. James' eyes lit up, whatever enmity he had toward Elle forgotten for a moment. Oh yeah, you can tell us what it is now. What do you call this dungeon? I actually really want to know. In the driver's seat, Elle flipped a pair of sunglasses down over her eyes and tilted her head up to look at James with a wide grin. Route predation, she said, before throwing her car into first gear and pulling away with a screech of tires, shooting forward toward a line in reality defined by an arch of street signs that would lead someone nowhere. Her car slipped effortlessly through it, vanishing from view in a pale cloud of sand and gripping light. Fuck, James commented as he and Anesh jogged back to their car to follow, switching sides so he could drive. That's pretty good. I'm going to have a hard time being mad at her for at least an hour or two now. I like that one.